It is September 1938, and Europe and the world prepare for war. A war over the fate of the Sudeten German population in the border regions between the Czechoslovak Republic and the German Empire, the Third Reich. Hitler has convinced the world that he doesn't care. He's going to go to war if the Czechs don't give in to his demands. But if they give in to his demands, they give up their country. They give up their resources, their defensive network, their fortifications, their arms industry, their dignity, and they also give up the active help of people around the world, the leaders of Britain, France, and Russia, to go in and help them fight the fascists. It looks from a rational standpoint like Germany is about to bite off way more than it can chew, but it's going to involve a major European war, and no one wants that. Least of all, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Neville Chamberlain of the Conservative Party. Neville Chamberlain is a person who did not fight in the Great War. He had relatives who did. He himself did not. He's been a bureaucrat and a politician, and he has come to lead the Conservative Party. Chamberlain's intentions are simple. He does not want to cause another great war, and he is willing to do whatever it takes to keep the peace. Chamberlain has a moral certainty, the likes of which we've only seen in America with Woodrow Wilson. The sense that they are the smartest person in the room, they have a connection to moral rectitude, that is a sense of rightness, the justness and rightness of their own cause that is superior to anyone else's. In other words, Chamberlain is not the sort of fellow who has a lot of self-doubt. He believes that he has it within his power to be brave enough not to fight and to keep the peace. And no one is going to convince him otherwise. Chamberlain's government, as the government preceding them, has been systematically marginalizing Winston Churchill and anyone else who is raising the alarm against Nazism. Chamberlain calls them a bunch of warmongers, and because they assume that Germany is dangerous. And Chamberlain assumes that if you call Germany dangerous, you're going to make them dangerous. So, first off, Chamberlain is an anti-communist, and the last thing that he wants is for the Soviets to get a presence, especially a military presence, inside of the heart of Central Europe. So he could care less about Soviet aid. However, he wants to do something, anything, a grand gesture to try and prevent another mass slaughter. And so he gets up and flies himself, without a retinue, without the members of his cabinet, without a lot of other government officials, to meet with Hitler personally in a summit. A summit meeting is when the leaders of two countries come together, like at the summit of power. And Chamberlain basically asks Hitler, what price for peace? And Hitler says, we want the Sudetenland. If we get the Sudetenland, we have no reason to fight. Chamberlain says, is that all? Hitler says, what else could I possibly want? In Europe, I kind of want the colonies that Germany used to have around the world. That's another issue for another day. Chamberlain goes back to Britain, tries to make this work, and then goes basically connives with the Germans, with the Italians, and drags the French Premier, Edouard Daladier, to go to a conference in Munich, Germany, that's going to resolve the Czechoslovak problem. This Munich conference in September 1938 has Germany represented by Herr Hitler, Italy represented by Signore Mussolini, Britain represented by Mr. Chamberlain, and France represented by Monsieur Daladier. You know who's not there? Well, the Russians, but you know who else isn't there? The Czechs! Nobody invites the Czechs. The Czechs would just mess it up, muck it up, and make things way too emotional and way too complicated. So those four men at Munich and the small group of politicians and bureaucrats that are brought with them negotiate a deal. And what that deal does is it gives the Sudetenland to Germany in return for a promise by Mr. Hitler to have no further territorial demands in Europe. That the last demand that he's going to make is for the Sudetenlands of the former Czech Republic. Hours after the agreement is signed, German troops cross into Czechoslovakia. At this moment, Chamberlain has arrived back at Croydon Airport, south of London. He gets out of the plane and holds a piece of paper up in the air in the breeze and says, "This paper bears my signature on it and that of Herr Hitler." He then goes on to say that the signatures on this paper will guarantee peace in our time. What Chamberlain has done is sold out the Czechs and the Slovaks. He has sold out his allies. He has violated the defense agreement that Britain had solemnly signed and that France had solemnly signed with the Czechs. He has sacrificed his neighbor's well-being for his own security, and he was cheered roundly for it. The people of London rise up. The king goes to visit him, which is an unusual thing. The king endorses the Munich Treaty. Again, the king doesn't normally get involved in political affairs like this. Everyone seems to be thrilled with Chamberlain's appeasement because in return for a small section of Central Europe that Britons neither know nor care anything about, no young Englishman, Scotsman, Welshman, or Irishman is going to have to go off and die in some foreign war. We've kept the peace in our time. And he got a promise. His promise was no more territorial demands in Europe. But the Czechs, without the Sudetenland, are completely defenseless. And when you make an agreement with somebody and you're counting on them to keep their word, try to avoid self-delusion. You may want the agreement really bad. You may want peace. You may think that this is a sensible, great agreement. But if you are dealing with a vicious thug who isn't concerned about honesty or morality or peace, but wants the power, somebody who has the moral compass of Tony Montana from Scarface, you'd better be darn sure that you have something more than their word if you're going to trust them. That was September 1938. In March 1939, Germany's army marches into the remainder of the Czech lands and conquers them and incorporates them into the German Empire. And Slovakia is brought under Germany's domination as a client state. So now, Germany basically includes what used to be Austria, the Sudetenland, the rest of the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. I'll point to them again, because clearly I was in the way. Germany now includes Austria, the Sudetenland, the Czech lands, and the Slovak lands indirectly. Chamberlain at this point realizes he's been played. We'll talk about his response next time.